posted to my YouTube community and on Facebook this video after watching this very tired mother who is really dressed up, thinking to myself, bless her heart, you can still see in her eyes how tired she is despite the beautiful dress, jewelry, and makeup for this video. Who is really filming? When people monetize their social media accounts and digital content, who pays for it? Who sets the reimbursement rates, and how are they calculated? Are these rates regulated or monitored for fairness and equity? These are not rhetorical questions. I'm genuinely interested in the answer. Many impoverished people and opportunists view digital content monetization as an easy way to not only earn money, but to become wealthy when compared to impoverished or underclass conditions and cost of living. Understanding who the people are who are involved in monetization programs for online content is extremely relevant to the negative impact of social media use and content, which is often debated. I then included some additional links, including this fundamentalist video, which I will show a clip from now. Let's take a gambling perspective to analytics for a moment. A life banker is anyone who believes they own another human being, individually or as a group, in any capacity, rental, lease, or full ownership, and therefore believe they have the right to sell or trade. I would like for you to ask yourself how many casinos there are in the Tidewater region, and then how many casinos there are in the DMV region between here in Norfolk, Hampton Roads, all the way up to Maryland and Delaware. So the whole DMV area, how many casinos there are. Then how many casinos are in Virginia, in the state of Virginia. Then I want you to consider how many casinos there are in the United States and where they are typically located. And a hint to that is a good place to start are around or within what they call Indian reservations. And I want you to consider that Indian reservations are created by encroachment, which means you have a community who has the run of the land, and then these other entities come in and slowly start forcing them into smaller and smaller places. And these families initially agree just to be left alone. Like we can manage in less space, but just leave us alone. And that's usually the agreement. There's also there used to be a very strong stance at both the federal and state level for states that have Indian reservations in them, that the government cannot enter those lands and have any say. So, I know this because of my child advocacy. So if you were to have a social service complaint about something that's going on a Indian reservation, then you have to work through the government within that Indian reservation in order to do anything. And there has to be, an alignment with the court system, the United States court system, and whatever court system has been established within those communities. So really, they are their own entity. And the reason why I'm asking you to consider this is because of things like the Latter-day Saints compounds. And just sort of as a throw out there, my husband and my daughters told me that about this documentary that's currently running on Netflix about the fundamentalists, which may give you some context for what I mean. So you have these other kinds of communities who are using the same kinds of laws and regulations that are used to protect natives who have been forced onto these Indian reservations and who agreed to it with the hopes that they would be left alone. But of course, once they're on those reservations, they slowly start to erode and starve the land, create and contaminate it, creating a famine, which then forces some families to come out of those reservations because they can't sustain life without being able to grow food and to raise their own livestock and so forth. I want to go back to my original question about social media monetization and the equity in digital content and how it is accessible. I want to focus this message on people who do not understand why people like Donald Trump say things like, "I don't do it for the money. I've got enough, much more than I'll ever need. I do it to do it. Deals are my art form." These are screenshots from the previously popular computer and then online role-playing game, The Sims, which will be replaced in 2024 by a newer, more graphically realistic version called Enzoy, which I'll share some footage from in a moment. In The Sims, you could earn simoleons to live a life online inside this role-playing game. I want you to imagine people like Donald Trump are controlling the game and that you are the characters. When you consider it from this perspective, especially as it relates to The Sims, do some thoughts begin to converge on how there are people who can say they don't do it for the money because they already have enough? Imagine you were able to purchase $23 million worth of quote unquote credits for only $99.99. Now, keeping with the metaphor of Sims and video game play, I want you to consider the purpose and function of remote monitoring systems and what some possible uses for this kind of technology might be, not only in the military, but also in the government and in civilian life.
Hi, this is Andrew from DPS again, and welcome back. One question that I hear fairly often from DPS clients is, how do we deal with a situation where we have a high-level group at our company that needs to know overarching overview type monitoring information, but also more locally in something like a facilities team, how do we keep an eye on what's happening in our own backyard in great detail? So let's sketch out a very basic example and walk through some of the key ways you can do this. You're going to have some number of remote sites with RTUs out there monitoring things. And they might be different manufacturers, they might all be the same, and you may have hundreds or thousands depending on the size of your network. I'll just draw 3 here for our example. And they're all going to be tied together, mostly via LAN. There are options for cellular. You might have old serial lines, but mostly nowadays it's going to be network. And they're all going to come here. So of course, if you've got more than a few of these, you're not going to monitor them directly. You're going to want to have some kind of a master station. So that'll be right here. And any good master is going to have some kind of a good display. So if we imagine one of our users connected to the web interface of that thing, they might have a map view. And they might be able to see that, all right, well, there's our overall region, and in this particular spot, there's an alarm going on. Let's go look at that. And you could have multiple users here. So you're going to have a couple different screens that people can see different things. So this is good, and this gives you the detail you want. But how does that higher level team, how do they get summary information about what's going on out at your sites? So that's going to have to be accomplished with a higher level master, which we call a master of masters, or sometimes a manager of managers, or a MOM for short. So one way, and I've actually had some people do this, you can actually poll the RTUs directly.
In all seriousness, it's the use and function of remote monitoring system that have brought me to make this particular video in hopes of helping people to understand the circumstances we are in more clearly. Can you imagine how living in a compound where the women are your primary labor force, and how having something like this would be useful and probably necessary for someone who uses the free labor of women for profit? Military and the DoD and used for malicious purposes that actually hurt people. And this is one of the most powerful examples, and that is parental controls. Parental controls are designed to help parents monitor their children's usage of cellular technology to protect them. However, all you need is access to the cloud and people's logins to be able to completely control their devices and to monitor them, which is why I am certain my logins and passwords have been confiscated. These are some of the features. Most people are familiar with them. A lot of parents use them, but people don't always consider how this might be used for someone in a domestically violent situation or an abusive situation, or how it could be used remotely in order to also control your phone and how it's used, but not just your phone. Anything that is logged into your Google ID or your Apple ID, for example, could be manipulated. And there are applications that are more extreme than this. They can do things like hold your text messages for approval before they are sent to your phone and things like that, which again, would be for parents a protective measure if someone was trying to scam them or they were concerned about them getting advertising text messages and things like that, because they happen. Then they could monitor the messages that are coming through and then let and approve them so that the kids can get those messages. No one should have to invest that much time and energy in supervising anyone. And in a community where 100% of the people agree to do no harm 100% of the time, those kinds of things aren't needed. But the problem is that we do not live in that type of society. And I want you to consider that in the clip I just shared on parental controls, that we're talking about most people in domestic households in the United States, where the people who are living there are living there consensually and hopefully in a marital relationship where both people have chosen each other and have begun to raise their family. But I want you to consider for a moment places where women are not given that choice and where marriage is a goal for the purpose of survival, not only for her, but also for any children that she has. I then want you to consider places where the women have no choice and those who are in charge of making choices for the kinds of labor they will provide have options for entertainment or for domestic use. How then might your perspective of remote monitoring technology and surveillance change when you consider these possibilities? Now consider circumstances where the goal for any of these roles is for the monetization of content for either of these categories. Although I don't have answers for who is involved in the monetization process and ensuring that reimbursement is fair and equitable, I do believe that we have clarity on how the monetization process is an incentive for people who want to improve their financial standing. We also can appreciate how a use of social media that will allow you to monetize can also be boosted in ways that provide an assist for people who seem to be leading in the kinds of content that they create, but that can also help to shape what types of content they tend to focus on and how much of it they produce on a regular basis. All of those things contribute to the debates that we have about
the negative aspects of social media use.
As parents, it's important that we not only be concerned about what our children are consuming, but what we are consuming as parents, especially mothers as well, in addition to the kinds of things we then consume and purchase as a result of what we see online. So I want you to consider all of these things in context, including this direction of the court system, which in essence has started to incorporate a gambling component, because that's what it is. And you can see it if you put together the commentary at the end of the news report with this idea of people being able to fund or sponsor complainants and then help shape the outcome of those cases in a way that people can gamble about it. So please think about those things, take them into consideration, and then be prepared to hold all of the right people responsible, fully accountable.